the mystery of the warlord, and the last feast of honor. 1. The start of the expedition, the foothills of the Hindu Kush. We begin our deep dive into mystery in the far north of Pakistan, where the Western world meets Asia, in the majestic and harsh foothills of the Hindu Kush mountain range. This is a land steeped in millennia of history, situated at the crossroads of the Great Silk Road and Indian civilization. Here, among the rocky gorges and dry riverbeds, archaeologists have searched for centuries for traces of the ancient kingdom of Gandhara. An international archaeological mission began here in the early 1990s, with the goal of documenting and preserving monuments from the early Middle Ages. The central figure of this work was Dr. Fatima Khan, a leading specialist at the Pakistan Department of Archaeology and Museums, DOAM, and an expert in the burial rites of the Gandhara region. In 1992, after long months of geophysical surveys in one of the desolate valleys, the expedition led by Dr. Khan came across an unusual stone structure. Beneath layers of erosion and ancient debris lay a carefully concealed entrance to a sealed tomb. After the breach, which itself required several days of meticulous work, the archaeologists uncovered a chamber that, according to initial estimates, had been sealed for over 1,000 years. At the entrance was an inscription, likely in a local dialect, mentioning the name Sharif Zawar, presumably a warlord or local ruler of that era. Inside was a scene frozen in time. At the center, on a specially erected stone podium, lay the skeleton of a man. Next to him, as symbols of his status, rested weapons: a curved sword, known as a kilej, and a dagger made of legendary Damascus steel. These artifacts immediately indicated a high military rank. On a lower platform rested 9 female skeletons. They were laid out in a strikingly neat, uniform order, arms extended alongside their bodies. Each woman was literally encrusted with wealth. Nearby were numerous gold ornaments, pearls, and remnants of fine silk fabrics. This was not merely a burial, it was the treasury of a clan. From that moment on, the work became not just archaeology, but a forensic investigation reaching 1,000 years into the past. The tomb of Sharif Zawar provided a glimpse into the early Middle Ages, specifically the 8th century. But the precise arrangement and uniformity of all 10 bodies immediately posed the main question to the team. What events and what funeral rite led to the simultaneous presence of 10 individuals in this tomb? And was this act planned before the tomb was sealed? To determine the answer, we must first accurately date and explore the world this discovery reveals to us, the crossroads of civilizations in 8th century Pakistan. 2. A world ablaze, the historical context of the 8th century. To understand such an extreme act, we must first understand the world in which it occurred. Traces found on the tomb place us in the 8th century CE, in the Gandhara region, present-day northern Pakistan and eastern Afghanistan. It was a time of tectonic shifts. For centuries, this land in the foothills of the Hindu Kush had been a cradle of culture. Here, Hellenistic art, left behind by the successors of Alexander the Great after his campaigns in the 4th century BCE, merged with Indian spirituality, giving rise to the brilliant Greco-Buddhist art. Extensive excavations, including the work of the Italian Archaeological Mission in the Swat Valley, for example, in the ancient city of Barakot, ancient Bazira, show us a picture of a flourishing, multi-layered past. But by the 7th to 8th centuries, this order was under colossal pressure. From the west, the relentless Arab Caliphate advanced, bringing with it a new faith and a policy of conquest. The Shahi dynasties attempted to resist this onslaught. These kings, who ruled from strategically vital capitals like Kabul until its fall in the 9th century, and later Udabandapura on the Indus River, were the main shield against the invasion of the Indian subcontinent. They embodied a mixed Hindu-Buddhist culture and fought fiercely, defending the mountain passes. The threat did not only come from the west. A new storm was constantly advancing from the steppes of Central Asia in the form of nomadic tribes. An inscription on a seal found in the tomb reads, "Conqueror of the Hyanites." This epithet for Sharif Zawar speaks of a life full of continuous brutal warfare. Dr. Khan's team proceeded to the next stages to obtain answers to the questions raised by the uniform arrangement of the 10 bodies and the presence of treasures. The remains and key artifacts, weapons, jewelry, fabric samples, and organic material were extracted and sent to the laboratories of the University of Peshawar for radiocarbon dating, anthropological analysis, and toxicological examination. The scientific investigation was underway. 3. Tomb forensics, examination results, and the Code of Honor. The results obtained from the laboratories changed the trajectory of the entire investigation. Anthropological analysis, led by Dr. Abdul Qadir, University of Peshawar, confirmed the man died at the age of 60 to 70 years. The 9 female bodies corresponded to ages from 16 to 48. The key evidence was the absence of trauma. No traces of swords, arrows, or defensive wounds were found on the skeletons. Their death was silent and simultaneous, a fact confirmed by the analysis of the decomposition of organic residues and tissues. The most crucial finding came from the toxicological examination. Traces of a fast-acting plant-based poison were found in bone samples and ceramic fragments. According to experts, the discovery virtually rules out murder and confirms a ritual planned death. The discovery turned a potential mass killing into a voluntary last feast. At this point, historian Dr. Khalil Aziz provided the necessary cultural context. Dr. Aziz, a specialist in early medieval codes of honor, stated in his report in 1994, date approximate, that simultaneous painless death confirms that the choice was made consciously. This was an act of protection. It is here that we turn to Sharif Zawar's Code of Honor. The man in the tomb was a product of a harsh, mixed world. His code, likely inherited from Scythian ancestors, blended with Hindu and Buddhist traditions and valued honor above life. In a world where defeat meant complete enslavement, traditions and the concept of honor acquired absolute value. To explain this phenomenon, Dr. Aziz cited historical parallels. He referenced the siege of Masada in 73 CE, where nearly 1,000 Jews chose collective suicide over Roman slavery. An even closer analogue, in his opinion, is the Jauhar ritual, practiced by the Rajputs of medieval India, where women committed ritual self-immolation to avoid capture, while their men marched out for a final, hopeless battle. The last feast is a variation of this theme. For an invader, the capture of a defeated ruler's wives was the ultimate display of dominance. Their transformation into concubines and slaves would have been living evidence of the family's dishonor. In this context, poison is not murder, but the final, terrifying act of marital duty. Thus, the tomb of Sharif Zawar is a monument to a conscious choice. But for what purpose? This question becomes even sharper due to one crying absence, 10 adults and not a single child. For a feudal lord of his status, the result is a deafening silence. Where did the heirs go, and how does their disappearance explain this tragic last feast? That is in the next section. 4. The theory of salvation and strategy of survival. The monument of the last feast, 10 adults who took poison in the 8th century, forces us to return to the most disturbing question, the absence of children. For Sharif Zawar, a warlord and feudal lord, kinship was an absolute value. The cessation of the clan's bloodline was equivalent to total extinction. Historical evidence from the conquests of the Arab Caliphate shows that the sons of defeated rulers were often executed, and the women and daughters were turned into slaves, which was the ultimate form of humiliation. This historical precedent makes Zawar's choice rational, albeit horrifying. The absence of children in the tomb turns the ritual suicide into a cold-blooded strategic calculation. The working hypothesis of the archaeologists is this. A few days before the fateful feast, when defeat became inevitable, the warlord activated an escape plan. At night, under the cover of darkness, a small squad led the children, the bearers of the blood and memory, through secret mountain passes to a distant allied or less accessible kingdom. Their death, the death of 10 people, became the final act of control over their destiny. Since the tomb was carefully disguised and sealed, their goal was twofold. 1, to preserve the honor of the wives from slavery, and 2, to prevent the looting of the ancestral treasures by enemies, essentially burying the clan's capital with themselves. This wealth, intended for the children, ultimately went to no one. Their departure provided the children with a legend of defiance and the moral right to return, and potentially distracted enemies from searching for living heirs. The story of the last feast became the clan myth, a duty they had to carry, to one day restore what was lost. Thus, this act was not merely death, but a victory through self-sacrifice, the final state decision. But did these heirs hiding in the mountains manage to survive? Does a clan exist today somewhere in the northern valleys of Afghanistan or Pakistan that still remembers its ancestor Sharif Zawar? Conclusion: the epilogue of Gandhara. The tomb of Sharif Zawar and his 9 wives is not just an archaeological find. It is a time capsule that holds the memory of the cost of a civilizational clash in the 8th century. Zawar's tragedy reflects the fate of the entire region. After centuries of heroic resistance, the Shahi dynasties, the main shield of Gandhara, were finally broken. Turkic dynasties, particularly Mahmud of Ghazni, decisively integrated the region into the Islamic world by the 11th century. The brilliant Greco-Buddhist culture of Gandhara faded. Ancient temples were abandoned or destroyed, and their art became part of museum collections. However, the story of the last feast reminds us that history is not only about conquest, it is also about choice. The traces of poison, the treasures, and, most importantly, the absence of children allow us to reconstruct this narrative, one of a deep belief that some things are more valuable than life, honor, kinship, and the future of one's people. The Last Feast is an eternal reflection on strategy and self-sacrifice in the face of doom. It leaves us with a question echoing from that silent tomb. If Zawar's descendants truly survived, how did they preserve their history, and what became of this clan built upon the bones of parental self-sacrifice? Do you believe this act is the greatest manifestation of honor, or, on the contrary, the greatest tragedy? Share your thoughts in the comments. Subscribe to the channel to continue our journey into the greatest unsolved mysteries of history.